So we're here at Oxfam in Oxford with online and in-person participants for a co-inquiry and reflective workshop on Just Regeneration. And we are really inspired to be held by our partners together in the regenerative movement to explore this question. We put it together because if there is a just transition that is meant to facilitate an inclusive, rights-based approach to especially the climate agendas, we also thought maybe regeneration should also be just, and there's a way to be inclusive about the approach to regeneration.
We were doing a very strange exercise, which is about design and what is design and designing from the ages and participatory design as opposed to design the way the West knows it, because we have this mindset that once something is designed in Europe, then it is for the rest of the world. So because we developed this concept of permaculture, the African way, from the Bafut eco-village, was invited to share what we call that in the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, convened by the UNDP. So this idea of also regeneration from the ages seem to be more sustainable than the concepts that have been top-down.
My name is Sarah Queblatin. I'm from the Philippines. I'm here with my colleague, actually an elder we look up to, Konkankoh from Cameroon. And then our colleagues from Colombia, Margarita Zetelius and Sunita Umba from Cameroon. We have been traveling since last week to be part of the Oxford Farming Conference, and then we had an event at Hawkwood, and this is our last event together for this leg, and we feel so privileged and so inspired to know that a lot of people are interested to co-reflect and co-inquire with us what a deep design approach to just regeneration looks like. But before we start formally, we would like to invite the sacred in our session. So in person, we would have Konkankoh to speak a blessing or guidance, and online, we would have some videos from Colombia with our elders from the Sierra Nevada mountains, and then from the Rosario Islands of Colombia, the Afro-Colombian, through our friends from Ubuntu Center, para la Abundancia, Margarita. So we can I'll pass it on to Konkankoh, and then you would like to begin the blessing from here in this space, and then we pass it on and maybe give Margarita co-hosting capacity.
Those of us in the room can take a deep breath and look around, see who is here. And those online can look inside and connect with some people around you, or also what we call your ancestors. But what we have in the middle of the room, it's a mandala of seeds. Maybe white seeds. When I was growing up, there were lots of wars. And the first thing was for the elders, in commune with the women, to bless the seeds and put them in the calabash. And the young, energetic youth will carry the seed across the river to the spiritual forest to hide them. So I was inspired to believe that seed must be very, very important. I come to think of it, what is in the seed? And some people have said from small acorns grow mighty oaks. Then talking today on the subject of regeneration, what has seed got to do with regeneration? Or maybe another question could be, what have we done to our seed? Or maybe what is our seed? I'm inviting those in the room to put the right hand on the heart and to reflect on this subject. Where is my seed? What I seem to get when I listen to the seeds our Mandela is speaking. Maybe seeds speak. Maybe plants speak. Maybe the land speaks. Maybe the plants speak. And what about our seed inside? Does it speak? I don't know of any other way that we can start to reflect together. And I feel honored to sit here in council with people from all over the world to reflect on something called just regeneration. I don't know where the word just came from. There seems to be a word to be very careful about. Well, maybe this is why our grounding is to go within ourselves and reflect on the word just. And because we are so peaceful in the way that we begin, and we look into each other's eyes, and some feeling is going around. And I feel the blue and the green energy. Or maybe the DNA is what we call feminine and masculine energy. Or maybe that's what is in the seed. So I'm curious to bring this reflection as a starting point for our time together. I'm really curious what will emerge from our discussions. If we're in Africa, we'll be sitting around the fireside, and so it's a place of story. And we're here to listen to each other's story.
Thank you, Konkankoh. We're also asking Margarita to share the blessing from Abueladaria from the Afro-Colombian community at Kikwa from the Konkankoh people of Colombia.
De hermandad a Camerún y a Filipinas, nuestros hermanos con los que estamos desarrollando este proyecto de alimentación consciente. Desde aquí, desde Ibáñez, en el municipio de Agua de Dios, desde nuestra finca Los Ángeles, desde el fuego que nos abriga, que nos calienta y que nos proporciona bienestar, en este territorio tan bonito. Desde aquí los queremos saludar y decirles que en este año podamos hacer acciones concretas que fortalezcan el tejido de la madre tierra. Vamos donde vamos, el Haití lo saboreamos. Vamos donde vamos, el Haití lo saboreamos. Es el fruto de la vida, es el fruto de la vida. A mí me gusta el Haití y me gusta su sabor. Es el fruto de la vida, es el fruto de la vida.
Tinamojina asime dare bunsi micha nao nandi atiki wazaki no kwani abiri joabi como que no kwabani zeizena zeni. Un saludo desde la Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, desde el calor del fuego sagrado de mi hogar, el arbono, que es el fuego sagrado que transforma nuestros alimentos en medicina. Aquí con la semilla del maíz nativo, unirme a la ceremonia por una alimentación más consciente, una alimentación que respete nuestro cuerpo y nuestros territorios y sobre todo que alimente nuestra conciencia. Muchas gracias por tener en cuenta nuestra asociación Semilla de Vida y Paz en este espacio, en esta ceremonia. Desde acá me uno con la energía de nuestras plantas sagradas.
Muchas gracias, Ati. Thank you, Ati, for being here. And this is part of the contributions and gifts that we want to bring from the Colombian region, from South America to this space in the other side of the world, with our brothers and sisters in Europe. Thank you.
So we will now enter an intention setting. And with your seeds, if you don't have seeds, then imagine that you have one. And then we would bring you to breakout groups as the Zoom room people. And then here in this room, we would go to the center and we would pick a seed we like, and then choose where you put it as part of a circle. It's not yet formed, so you can form it together. And when you see a seed, you try to complement or put it around with others. But since there's small of us, so please feel free to use more seeds. And as you go there, you say your name and then your intention. What calls you to be here? So those are just the two questions. Your name, what calls you to be here? And we will group you in Zoom and we will huddle here for the online. And I can start this. Because we didn't say a prayer from the Philippines, I'm just grateful to share the mandala work, because for some reason I've been holding ritual spaces for Babaylans, the pre-colonial shamans of the Philippines, and perhaps this is what the prayer from our country is supposed to help. So my name is Sarah. My intention is to know I am not alone, to feel that affirmation that my questions are shared by everyone, and that the dream is by all of us together.
And now I'll open the breakout rooms if you online would like to start sharing between each other online and bring in your metaphorical seeds into that space and your intention.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Our in-person session, I'm still looking at Zoom. Thank you again for the blessing. That was kind of important and a way for us to be more connected to the spirit of the place and with each other. So, and thank you for you bearing with our tech. It's quite an unusual way to do combination, but we are also fascinated by this owl camera that we can see that the camera is moving. So we're very grateful to do that. So We're also going to enter now to the more formal space of our discussion. And I will try to show you a video from Lucia Nader, who is specializing in research on regenerative activism. And Lucia is from Brazil, and she's an innovator, also an Ashoka Fellow, and really, really inspiring person, supporting regenerative organizations, working with donors, promoting inclusion and rights-based approaches.
So, hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation and congratulations for the initiative, Sarah, Realliance, and all other organizations involved. I am Lucia Nader. I'm Brazilian. I have been working in the human rights field for the last 30 years. I'm speaking today to you from Brighton in England, where I'm doing my PhD research on regenerative activism. My main question is, what are the enablers to renew, restore, and revitalize activism? The topic of this gathering, where you are today, is just regeneration, and this is at the center of what I am asking myself and studying in my PhD, and also what I'm trying to practice in my daily activism and my consultants with civil society organizations and philanthropic institutions. For me, just regeneration is only possible if we talk about power, if we center power when we try to design perspectives and practices that are more regenerative, or that are more regenerative and just. What do I mean by that? Looking at power relations, including structural inequalities and structural discriminations that take place at three levels. The first level is within our organizations. So, what are the power relations that operate within our organizations, and how do we deal with them? What is in place as policies and processes that can allow us to be more regenerative, centering how the power relationships are dealt with inside the organizations we are part of. Very often, as you know well, these processes and policies are based on a command control perspective that doesn't take into account structural discriminations, structural inequalities, and don't try to transform those or power relations that are taking place there. The second level where I see we should look at power relations is the power relation between donors and the organizations that receive their money. So again, this power relationship is very often based on a command and control perspective, and this leads to fear, this leads to lack of trust, this leads to lack of transparency from both sides. So what could be more regenerative practices that look at power between donors and grantee organizations? Here we have several initiatives trying to do that, such as trust-based philanthropy or feminist philanthropy, and they also need to go deeper on their conceptualization and how they can be more present in the relationship between donors and grantees. And finally, I also believe that we have to look at power within, or inner power in each of the individuals that wake up every day to do their activism, to try to contribute to a better world. And what are the practices that can be more regenerative in fostering and strengthening power within? These practices are not the same for a Brazilian white privileged woman like me and a Brazilian black woman or an indigenous person in Brazil that has to sustain in an everyday basis this power within. So, well, this is my approach to what I think could be a just regeneration and a regenerative just activism. I believe this is possible, again, only if this is informed by a rights-based and by a power perspective, taking into account the complexity at the national, international level, and also trying to advance what is written in the text that describe your event today. Try to advance a liberating, inclusive, and a more a regeneration that it looks at inequality, that try to be just. So I wish you a very good gathering today. I'm very sorry not to be there. It was not possible for me. And yeah, so thank you and see you soon.
Thank you so much. Obrigada. Obrigada, Lucia. Really grateful. I know you're not here in the room, but since it's recorded, you can see and hear our appreciation for this framing. I'm going to share my screen a little bit to show a background on what regeneration means, because maybe not everyone is familiar, at least just for us to come from the common understanding, of regeneration. This is very interesting because this graphic was shown by the UN Habitats actually the last 2 months. And I already kind of put together a training design in bioregional governance for cities in Asia Pacific. And I was like, damn, I should have added this because now it's coming from the UN that they're now recognizing the shift from sustainability to regeneration. And you can see this is a more simplified graphic, but basically the conventional developments you would see has harmful or negative impacts on the lower left. And then if you go regenerative, it really offers us the positive impact and from the social and environmental lens. And then the sustainable lens is really to work with less damage, less harm, but actually in the regenerative lens is to really give back, to do more. And that's the simplest way this is framed. In the next chart, I think this is Bill Reed and other partners who framed this beautiful graphic to describe, the comparative lens of what is sustainable, even from the conventional to the regenerative. You look at it from the vertical, from the bottom up. You would see that as you go towards regenerative, there's less energy required. And if you are in the conventional practice, it's more energy. And then as you expand horizontally, you really work with a lot of complexity because that is how working with living systems is. We are inspired by that understanding that everything is nested. There's a lot of relationships within a system, and the complexity is inviting us to look into integrity and integration. It's a constantly evolving process. But the less complexity towards the left is really not trying to simplify something that is not really simple and is in danger of actually leaving out the more essential things that are vital to our evolution. So that's one frame, and we really love sharing this graphic from Realigns, constantly try to share this because it's simple enough to also see, what is the difference between aid and sovereignty, because regeneration really brings us to sovereignty. Compared to food security, it brings us to food sovereignty, and then from, again, the conventional design is limiting us to a more degenerative experience, keeps us dependent. The aid cycle keeps us dependent and doesn't honor our capacity to be self-sufficient, to be sovereign. And this is where our work towards regeneration is. So with that, we welcome you again. Our objective for this session, this is only a co-inquiry and reflection workshop. We're not here to tell you what a just regeneration is. We're actually here to inquire together. what does it mean? Because we may have different ways of seeing it, and there's no clear definition to it. The same as there are definitely definitions in regeneration and regenerative design and development. Are there others, definitions that we don't know of or that we can frame together that is inclusive enough? And we want to see the gaps and the blind spots as well, because it seems to be where we are all going. Like there's a push for regenerative agriculture everywhere. There's a major, like I said, the UN is starting to push for it already. So what is it exactly? And what perhaps could be ethics and guidelines we should be thinking about, since it is in danger of being co-opted. So you have massive agro-industrial companies going to regenerative agriculture, but is it inclusive of the farmers, indigenous peoples that are, whose land are they working with? Or we're thinking about ecosystem restoration, large scale restoring of the land, putting carbon in the soil, carbon credits, but does it really, is it truly regenerative? So our hope, and in 3 hours, it's not enough, really in 2 to 3 hours, is to have at least a mapping and maybe an analysis of the existing ecosystem, and maybe recommendation how to form the ethics guidelines and safeguarding system. And we will be hearing from several partners here, because we want to bring in their experience in exploring the following questions. How might we ensure an inclusive, liberating, and decolonial approach to regenerative design and development? How might regenerative design and development be truly, inclusive and liberating? How might we address it from a trauma-informed approach? How might regeneration be restorative and reparative to avoid recolonizing place and people? What ethics and guidelines can offer guidance to working in the development frameworks and agendas? We will hear from our partners because they are working with several networks and initiatives. We haven't heard from Oxfam, I just realized, but maybe because she's not around, Rhea Russell, we will invite James Atherton to speak about the program of Oxfam that's relevant to this inquiry. And I will pass it on to James.
Well, thank you. And so you're very welcome to add in if you like. But no, it's such a pleasure to be in this space, and thank you so much, Sarah, and everybody for sharing. I know there'll be space for more co-design and exploration in a moment. But I just thought it would be nice to give some context as to why we're in person here in Oxfam House. And this decolonial approach is a real journey that Oxfam ourselves are trying to go on over the past, I'd say, 5 to 10 years. This has been a real core part of our approach. In some ways that we're taking this decolonial approach to our programming is through a partner-led approach. So how can we instead of taking a lot of resource and energy in the way that we do our work, instead working in partnership with organizations in the Global South and those who have the wisdom and the experience to make the work more culturally relevant and appropriate in the work. So in the wider humanitarian and development or aid sectors, we know that it's quite, the conventional approach is to kind of have resource and also have a lot of the programming and action at the organizational level. But this approach of working in partnership with organizations seems like a relatively radical way of working and something that we're deepening more into. So anything to add, Joe?
So we also have Joe from Oxfam in the room, working with WASH.
I think that the radical nature of shifting mindsets from moving away from subcontracting partners to what does shifting of power genuinely look like in decision making, financial and design is something that we are grappling with. And it's definitely something that is not an easy path to take, but also in that, what is our role in confronting a system that is using your colleagues' words, design for control and command into how do you shift the system that creates, and it isn't just tweaking the edges, but what would it look like if the system was turned on its head?
So it's a pleasure to be part of this this listening moment, co-design. Thank you for having us, and being those of you in person in Oxfam House, welcome, and of course those online, welcome as well. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having us, Oxfam. So we will hear, I kept on introducing that we will hear, sorry for the sequence mistake there, but we will hear now from the partners helping us in this co-inquiry. And I will be inviting members of the Global Equivalence Network and partners of Gaia Education, specifically from Colombia, Alianzas para la Abundancia, and it was the Center for Margarita Zetelius. Margarita, would you like to share screen, or would you like to just speak? Share about your experience as part of regenerative networks and movements.
Thank you. Yep, I think I will just talk like this. Oh, and this is funny because just the picture that we have, you can leave the one that Sarah. One of the things that I keep telling the people in the Global Eco-Village Network and all of the networks that we are is how important it is that we embrace those achievements that we have as ours. So for all of us to be able to talk about the project of Abuela Daira that she was singing under the tree with the fire with her, she has been displaced 7 times in Colombia, in a place that is so violent and has a history of so much suffering. And she keeps that spirit despite all the challenges. And she is now creating this beautiful space that it's called Agua de Ángeles, a new humanitarian council. And for us to be able to say, yes, this is happening in the world. So when I think the picture that Sarah had before was in Thailand. And when I talk about the Global Eco-Village Network all around the world, I talk about those gifts and those contributions as ours. No, it's not they far away. No, it's us as humans being able to behave in a different way. It's us in different contexts, in completely different cultures, being able to create what we call regenerative. That is really taking care of ourselves, really taking care of the land that we are, or the sea. I have this mangrove on my background because I live on an island, and I live on an island in the Caribbean coast of Colombia. That was an island that was considered no one land for many years, but there was people living there. There were indigenous people, then there were people descended of slavery or escaped from slavery and were living there as fishermen, growing food. And then it became a very touristic area, for very rich people. And at some point, the government wants to kick everyone out, especially the communities. And there was a big struggle there and a recognition. And I bring this because it's an example of what we will like to call resilience and regeneration and real sustainability. Really, the terms doesn't matter, but what is in the depth and in the process and in the results. So in this island, the government, talking about conservation, they want to kick them all out. And because of despite the violence and the corruption that we have in a country like Colombia, we have been able to develop a constitution that recognized traditional communities' rights in 1991. So they were able to fight, and they were able to be recognized in 2014. So these stories of accomplishments, of care, of retribution, of reciprocity, of equality, that I think we need to tell more and more. No, we have the power struggles, as we have heard, but then we have these stories that bring us hope. In our world currently, there is such a lack of hope. Not that more, and then in the donors and the fundraising and the, how you call that? Well, the capacity that we have to give many companies, people, then we said, well, where is that we can make a difference, really a difference, and it's not inside this corruption and misuse of resources. So our duty, and I feel so happy to be with my friend Sarah and my friend Sonita and Konkankoh, because we are a result of a vision. We are the result of a vision of the Global Eco-Village movement of bring the South, bring the voice of the South, connect the voice of the South with other arenas. We come from local projects, but we are part of these local projects that are able to also speak in English. Not many people from my communities speak in English, so I can bring that voice and close the gap between what we can dream as an international community and international resources and what is happening in the local areas. And that's what we are also doing here. We are also bringing the examples of how we build with traditional wisdom, with ceremony, with rituals, but also with projects that we can have together. So we are bringing not just the projects, but the depth of what is happening in our lands, the depth, what the Mother Earth is calling us to do. And and I was just so happy to see the chat that we have in the Zoom. No, now we have just connections, just a few minutes that we have to talk about ourselves. Oh, I want to know more about the project. Oh, no. So this is really what brings joy and energy to my work that is so overwhelming, is to see you and to be here together and to be able that we have just for these few connections, this is worth it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Margarita. Yes, that's an insight from the Latin American experience and deeply rooted in indigenous wisdom. And actually, I think later Margarita will invite you to an event they're coming up with called the Call of the Mountain in Colombia, gathering of all initiatives in Colombia. So feel free to also add that in the chat in case we run out of time later, Margarita. And we will go on to Africa with Sonita Umba from Better World Cameroon, who's also with Konkankoh, working together. And their experience in Cameroon, and also she also served as secretary for Gen Africa, and maybe an insight also to the regional experience. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah, and everyone for joining. Yeah, so coming from Gen Africa, I can already share that there's a vibrancy in the movement, in the regenerative movement. And we can see that when we go to the communities, the question is, does that come up to the surface and seen in the world? And I know that in one of the sessions I attended a few days ago, I think it was at the Oxford Real Farming Conference, someone made an analogy of a pyramid. And that at the top of the pyramid, that usually that's not where the focus should be. Rather, the focus should be at the bottom of the pyramid, that when we throw water on the bottom of the pyramid, what happens is it can sink more deeply. Whereas if we pour water at the top, it would just automatically run down. But what that analogy also brought to me is that in the eco-village movement in Africa and lots of African communities, is that at the top of that pyramid, there's a resource, there's a certain resource. And in this moment, I could say it's a financial resource. And that financial resource is kind of tipped up here at the top. And then there are lots of beautiful, amazing regenerative work happening at that bottom of the pyramid. But what happens is also that there's a lot of desire for more abundance at the bottom of the pyramid, and that usually do not translate. So the resources at the top do not necessarily get to the communities and the amazing regenerative work that is happening at the bottom of the pyramid. And so therefore the question is, how can we harness the abundance so that the work that is done in the communities is also done from a place of abundance? And that the heart and work of a lot of communities, in this case across 27 African countries, is connected to the abundance and the source of joy and hope. And this brings to me a question just beyond the financial power, the question of happiness and joy and the living in lush and abundance of the actual desire of the work we do, but also benefiting from that work. And this also connects to the question around donor funds, where lots of the funding is focused on activity oriented. So there's so little funds given to core funding of institutions and projects. And so therefore, the humans and indigenous people that are actually doing the work are in a way starved of financial resourcing because the actual funds need to go to the activities and not to the people doing the work. So how can we, in this just regeneration, if we really want to go to the depth of regeneration and touch the places where the communities are doing the work on the ground to regenerate our planet, how can we deeply nourish the places that are nourishing our planet? And how can we ensure that those people who are doing this work are also being nourished to the depth of their being? So I would also like to speak to, therefore, the connection of this to the work that indigenous communities are doing and the importance in Gen Africa that this work is a combination of the modern and the indigenous, because we've realized that in today's world, we cannot just look at indigenous knowledge, but there's also modern word coming at us. And so there's the in-between. So lots of communities across Africa are not just looking at the different mothers and how to maintain seeds that are going on extinction, how to regenerate landscapes and mangroves and regenerate water sources, create new springs. But they're also looking at how can we adapt new manuals, new training opportunities that are coming also from other parts of the world, maybe from Europe, maybe from North America. How do we adapt them so that they speak and connect to the local realities of the communities? So there's this work that is done both ways. And I think one deep inquiry that we've been having both in the project from Ubuntu to Papua is also reframing, rewording the terminologies that we use in the context of regeneration. So mostly the words that have been used have mainly reap communities or indigenous communities of the depth and value, because most of the words cannot be translated in our local languages. So we need to find also the right words and framing for the kind of work that is done so that the people in the local communities can understand it. But also as facilitators and translators, we can bring that knowledge as well into other places like here in this meeting. And yeah, and when we look at from Ubuntu to Kapwa, I'm just now looking at these two words. We're looking at also how can the South nourish each other? How can we feel empowered so that regeneration is not just a thing? To make it just is a question, can communities in the global South bring something, some solutions also to the North? Is there a possibility that communities in the South can share with each other? Can go beyond the borders, the colonial borders, can go beyond colonial framings and look again, as Margarita said, into the depth. And I know that projects across Gen Africa working on planting seeds, and not just planting seeds and spreading them across large landscapes. They're actually doing seed ceremonies, the blessing the seeds, the ensuring that the seeds are locally grown, and that in the end, where seeds are planted, they are very well taken care of and nourished by the communities. And yeah, and I look forward to exploring more with the rest of the partners here. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonita. So beautiful, you remind us of the sacred, the rituals, signals, and also very practical things like financing, being around power, both in that. Yeah, I will share a little bit from the Asia Pacific experience. I shared some slides because I know I will have to focus on other things in preparation. So bear with me with just some slides just to describe our experience. And I could go to the last part because that was the last slide. Apologies. So in our experience in Asia, because we are one of the climate vulnerable regions in the world, our work is really working from the edges in terms of that climate vulnerability. I'm coming from my experience with green relief, working with climate frontliners, also in conflict areas, where we really experience that regenerative design, regenerative work in resilience. So we try to change the narrative of disaster risk reduction to designing for resilience and regeneration. So it's still the RR. But we saw that it's possible to work around a circular, innovative, systemic, long-term, and nature-based, reflective, survivor-led, trauma-informed, local, and inclusive approach. That for us is our experience that this is how regenerative innovations taking place in the region, what they're actually, how they're delivering their regenerative work. I shared we are one of the most vulnerable to climate change, but when we say vulnerable, we really have to reflect on that because sometimes it makes us feel like we're, disempowered really when we say vulnerable. And somehow we want to come from our strength as well. Like vulnerable can also mean that we have learned a lot of innovations through that vulnerability. And I want to say that the region also and our opportunities is we have a lot of strong community-led initiatives, a lot of deep wisdom from indigenous work, and then again the innovations that are because mostly with limited resources, we're forced actually to innovate. The region is also mega diverse. There's a lot of opportunity if we were to restore coral reefs or biodiversity, you can cover large scale because they're concentrated in many parts of the region. But our challenges, apart from climate vulnerabilities, grassroots financing, like we're also exploring like loss and damage. And how do you finance that? People in the front lines, because most often our experience as small grassroots organizations or regenerative organizations is that most of that goes through a bottleneck where the adaptation funding goes through large international bodies, often in Europe or the West, and then so little goes down and trickles down to the local communities. Lots of human rights challenges. So, for example, we talk about a large-scale ecosystem restoration or carbon credits, but then displacing indigenous peoples in their own lands, or when those credits need to actually go to them for already protecting that land before the projects begin, or land tenure as well, because how can there's a lot of indigenous and climate finance coming in, but if they don't even own the land or access that land, how can they be the stewards? And then apart from climate change and the challenges with our government policies, there's also extractive companies. Asia is a very big provider of minerals and things that are being mined all over the region. So it's very hard to speak regeneration in terms of working with ecosystems because we're also dealing with these other factors. So that's just a snapshot of the region. But again, the strength is there's a lot of innovation and community-led work. A lot of them are also institutionalized and working with governments. And the fact that we are a mega diverse region, there's so much potential for large scale regeneration. So that's our experience in Asia. We're gonna go back to the slide, but we will introduce the next presenter. We have come from the Global Eco Village Network earlier, and we're now going to go to Realliance through, and then it's very hard. I'm gonna go back to the slides, to Juliet's slides. So we have Juliet Milliken from Realliance to share a discussion about Realliance and its work. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I speak from here? Can you see me from here? And can you hear me?
How's the audio? Can everyone hear us okay? Okay, that's a yes.
I would take it as a no. Could we have some nods if you can hear us out there?
Is there a thumbs up if people can hear?
Yeah, we can hear.
Thanks, Jackie. It's okay.
Great.
Good. My name is Juliet and I work with Realliance. I'm not going to give you a slideshow, but I am going to tell you a little bit about the work of Realliance, and I'm going to pick up on some of the issues and questions that have been brought into this space already. Sunita earlier, lovely to hear from you again, Sunita. Sunita said, we need to know how to explain this work to local communities. I mean, I find the same thing. I find where I am. How do I tell people what I do? And when I meet people, trying to say I work in regenerative humanitarian response, I can't even say the words without tripping over them, let alone make sure that somebody else understands them. So I'm going to try and take them one by one and unpick them and then raise some questions about how do we do this stuff? Because if we're committed to growing the movement, we need to know how to talk about it. Sarah shared with us some lovely designs which explained what regenerative looked like in terms of imagery. And Joshua earlier asked the question about what is just, and isn't it an interesting word? So let's have a look at just regenerative response. What is it and how might we do it? I'm going to start with the question of just. I mean, just comes from justice, and justice means fairness and equality for all. But just also means only. When someone says to me, would you like milk and sugar in your coffee? I tend to say, no, just milk, please, or just coffee, thanks, nothing else. So just means only, and just comes from justice and means fairness. But when you bring those two together, maybe fairness is the only way, because things that are not fair are not going to survive. They are going to degenerate themselves. If they're not fair, they're not going to survive and thrive. And we see that from peace and conflict work. Unless there is a true fairness and understanding and a willingness to come to an agreement, then peace cannot prevail. So what does regenerative mean? It's got something to do with land, it's got something to do with people, and it's got something to do with fairness. But recently I've been doing some writing about what regenerative peace building might look like. And I think regenerative means the ability of a system to heal itself. That in the right context, a system, and we're all part of a system, we're all part of a system of living things, a system can heal itself. Nature can heal itself. James told me the other day that your liver can heal itself, that if you cut off part of its liver, it will regenerate, i.e. it will heal itself. But do things always heal themselves if left on their own? Do communities heal themselves? They do if there's love. Does nature regenerate itself? Yes, it does, if the conditions for regeneration are right. But without clean air, without water, nature cannot regenerate itself. So this brings me to the question of what is just regenerative response? What kind of intervention and support does a system need in order to heal itself? And I think those of us working in this field, this is the question which we must ask ourselves. What kind of support and the systems do we put into a system to enable it to heal itself? Some of the conversations we had when we were on the way here was, I think, really about the role of insiders and outsiders. And I think I want to stay with insiders and outsiders rather than global northerners and global southerners or different class differences. Insiders and outsiders, because many people here in this room are both northerners and southerners. They're both locals and internationals. So those things get confused, I think, or at least there are some people who are brokers between both. So let's stay with insiders and outsiders. And insiders are people, I think, who share a common experience. And outsiders are those who come to view and perhaps intervene and involve themselves in that common experience. And as I said before, I think there's some people who act as brokers between both. There are some people who come from local communities who have been educated, who've traveled, who've had the experience of being internationals, but they do have a common experience back home. So how do those of us who are outsiders help a system to which we are outsiders to heal itself? What support do we give? And what support do we need to stop ourselves from giving? And I think that's a really important question. And Lucia, hi Lucia, lovely to see you here. Lucia is also a colleague from IDS, and everybody at IDS talks about power. You can't be in IDS for very long without engaging with the question of power. So it was lovely to hear Lucia talk about what power means in a regenerative response. But as soon as we have that experience of being outsiders, whether it's a class experience, an education experience, a travel experience, it tends to give us a recognition of a certain kind of power. And that power can be useful, but that power can be really destructive. And again, those of us who work in regenerative or in humanitarian response have to be really careful that we don't damage a system further by bringing into it assumptions from that other experience or that other power that damage what a community or a system is able to do to heal itself. I don't have any clear answers to those questions, but those are the questions that preoccupy me and preoccupy us in Realliance in trying to work with a network of people engaged in what we're trying to call regenerative response to disaster, conflict, and displacement. What do we do and what do we offer? A number of things that we're doing at the moment, just to mention a few, is to pilot innovations that take account of the needs of communities and the needs of the land they're living on. That will help both to thrive, and then to try and distill from that what the questions and the processes are that can be useful elsewhere, and to put that into materials, into trainings, into webinars, conversations that share that knowledge and that understanding. What is it that's contextual, and what are the kind of central principles and processes and questions that could be shared with other places? So we do some peer learning, we do some resource development, we do some piloting of responses, we're developing some training courses, and we're trying to build the network. So it's great to connect with everybody here. I think we're all committed to trying to build this as a movement, and so networks are really important in doing that. And I think I want to leave you with this notion of what are the questions that we need to be asking in order to support a system to heal itself? What can we give, and what do we need to not assume and withhold from giving so that the system can take on its own healing process?
Thanks, Juliet, and also for bringing the word healing as regeneration, restoring itself, regenerating, bringing it back to life. And that's a very core definition of regeneration. And we often get lost with what regeneration truly means, and at the heart of it is healing, enabling that healing with communities and discussing forms of power and healing power as the work of the regenerative movements like Realigns. I also want to add the link to Realigns website because they're doing really amazing work, and we are part actually of Realigns, I'm a member of Realigns, and you can see a lot of their modules and materials on regenerative aid and working with frontline communities in refugee camps and climate vulnerable ecosystems. I wonder if everyone is okay and maybe we can get a thumbs up, especially for the audience in the Zoom, because it's always overwhelming if you're just listening and watching and just want to check in your temperature. You want to do a thumbs up if you are still okay. It's quite interesting to talk on Zoom, but also listen here in the room. Thank you. We see some hearts as well. Okay. We will also hear, because the regenerative movement is very large actually. So we have the regenerative aid, we have the eco villages you heard earlier. We also have the permaculture movement as part of the regenerative networks. And we will hear from Maria Paz from Permaculture Association to also hear about their experience working with their Global South members and members of the permaculture movement. Maria is calling in from the UK as well, and she'll be on this link.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much. I feel so privileged, and I know when I go back to my colleagues and tell them what has been happening, everyone is going to be thrilled. We've been looking at opportunities to connect and as well share more information with other movements that are similar or that share some views or some principles with permaculture. So really pleased to be part of this event. And as well, I'm looking forward to continue this conversation. I'm just thinking all the different topics we could share and evolve together. So what I'm about to share is just information that we have gathered through conversations with people or organizations and some groups, community groups, who are located in countries in the Global South. They come to us. They, for different reasons, they find that perhaps the Permaculture Association in the UK can help them. And one of the main issues they have, or the main reasons why they contact us, is that they want to connect. If I look at all the requests that we receive, 50% of those requests are connections. They want to connect with organizations, with projects, with people who are doing as well permaculture. And the idea is that they want to learn what is happening and how they are dealing with similar issues they might have. So how can I continue? One second. Okay, for some reason. Okay, so I'm just going to share who is contacting us, the challenges that they have shared. I'm going to move quickly to the challenges. And some of these ones have been already shared. I have heard using different words, but mainly I can see the links between different presenters have shared. So the first one has been language barriers, and that has to do with not finding enough information about permaculture in their languages. And in some cases, is as well the definition of permaculture. What does it mean, permaculture, in a place where probably they have been more connected to nature than in places where permaculture comes from, that perhaps the communities were disconnected from nature. So the definition, in some places they struggle to understand what it means. As well, when the language, there is no straightforward word for permaculture, the translation it adds another layer of confusion. So in Asia, for example, Japan, China, Taiwan, they find that in some communities that when they translate, and in Africa as well, when they translate the term permaculture, there is a bit of confusion, and there is a lot of room for interpretation from those ones who are translating the concept. As I mentioned, access to information, there is a wide range of information available online, but they are unsure what is really relevant to them. There is a lack of recognition in mainstream systems. There are standards. They are not sure whether that applies to them or not. There is lack of recognition of different realities, traditions, knowledge, and history. There are lots of conflicts in the history of different countries where the idea of understanding or joining a movement like permaculture, it comes with some connotations, and that is not recognized. There's no room to have that conversation. There is fragmented support and solutions, and this has created a dependency in terms of who is supporting, where the money is coming from. And I think Lucia was mentioning something about that it needs to be a different relationship between donors and grantees. So I think this is the main thing, is that relationship between those ones who are supporting and willing to help, but as well on the other side, those ones who are receiving the support. And sometimes it comes with maybe a few months of support, but that is not a coherent support. It's something that is just one-off. It finishes, and then there's no solution. There's nothing. Maybe there was, in some cases, communities who received food for a certain period of time, but after that, there's nothing else. And they have to wait. And then there is that dependency on someone from outside is going to come and help us. So it needs a shift. There is a disconnection between traditional knowledge, academy, science, and I could put other actors here, but those I wanted to emphasize these ones because clearly there have been spaces where communities and academy and science have been together, but the conversations do not flow. And that is causing loss of biodiversity and, of course, cultural wisdom, lack of understanding of the places where communities live and the solutions that are relevant to those places. And I think it was mentioned as well, unfair power dynamics in the way that these decisions are made in terms of how to use the land, what are the right solutions to preserve or conserve or protect spaces. And the next thing I wanted to share is, I think, I'm so sorry, the solutions. So from the Permaculture Association, what we are trying to do is to highlight the work of permaculture organizations and those ones in the countries where they are connecting to us, how they are supporting those communities, what is working in those places, how they are solving their own issues using a framework, but what is relevant to them from those frameworks. Not everything is relevant. And as well, through that support, having these regular conversations with groups and giving them that opportunity to connect and to share, and creating more space to share between the North and the Global South. As well, we are increasing partnerships and connections to make the movement a bit more visible. We are working on a strategic map for permaculture, but I wonder whether we could do a map that maybe is not only about permaculture, but maybe a map that covers all the regenerative movements or all the movements that are somehow healing the planet and the communities. And in that, we are as well increasing or trying to create more partnerships and connections to create solutions that in the future would be community-led processes instead of someone who comes maybe from another country to tell them permaculture looks like this, and this is the recipe, because those recipes are very dangerous. A recipe that works in one country would not work in another one. So it's making sure that those the way that they apply permaculture is completely led by themselves, by locals, with the knowledge that they have. And that's what we would like to see, and we would like to share a bit more about. And yes, fostering mutual understanding and more collaboration and support between organizations. A few examples. I don't know, we won't have time, but I will leave here the links if anyone would like to see some groups who have contacted us in the past. They are doing lots of programs and activities, and they have their own solutions in the places where they are based. And one of them that I would like to highlight is the Red de Guardianes de Seeds in Ecuador. It's a seed network, and is a group of families saving seeds, and as well creating their own income. And everything started with permaculture, and everything was following what permaculture says. However, when you look at the details of what they are doing, it's completely local. It's completely they have included traditional wisdom and the knowledge that have come from their ancestors. A similar organization is in Peru, is Chaikuni Institute. They are more focused on research, but they are working as well with indigenous people, and they are merging permaculture with indigenous knowledge from Peru and the Amazons. So it's a really good example to look at. And then integrating ancestral land stewardship practices with modern techniques as well. Timor-Leste, they have we have had recent conversations about water management and solutions created by communities, and I would say that they are kind of the leaders in terms of creating these solutions with the community, and they have done it in around 5 years, and they have an impressive number of spaces where they are collectively using the resource, and the solution has worked for a good number of members within the community, and is very successful. That's all from me. I hope I didn't take too much time. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. It's very, very detailed, and just we're getting more and more grounded with the real examples of the limitations of regeneration, but opportunities as well, because it's all there, that the solutions are there. Thank you. Gracias. Now we will go to the next network or movement. It's actually a think tank called Unorthodox, and used to be the Luck Hoffman Institute, and they've been working the last 3 years to map out what the regenerative future looks like, and has been gathering the work of regenerative innovators recently, and that and it was very, very valuable to see that their research on regenerative futures includes a lot of the regenerative voices from Global South and indigenous communities. And and I think, I don't know when the report is coming out, but maybe Anka Damaral can give us insight to their work and what is their experience of what regenerative futures looks like, and how the movement looks like from their experience. And so Anka Damaral is the Director of Innovation at Unorthodox, and we want to spotlight her. She's here, and Anka, if you want to share screen as well, or just speak directly.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Sarah. Can I recommend everyone to just do a quick shake of hands? Yeah.
Thank you.
Rub yourself a bit, bring that blood flow back. Try and stretch a bit. You've been all super patient listening to these very, very wise words that we've all heard. They say when you find your tribe, you just know. And for me, I knew I'd found mine after hearing all this wisdom today. The feeling, that I can spend hours talking about the structural inequalities and discrimination that Lucia shared, the sovereignty, the colonization and the liberation, but also bringing that element of hope. It feels like home. So I think whether you're in person or like me tuning online, it feels really special to be part of this incredible tribe. We see the deep thinking, we see the bold dreams, we see the courageous regenerators on the ground. So thank you to the organizers for their efforts to bring everyone together. And I also owe a special thanks to you, Sarah, for introducing me to this tribe. So I hope I can live up to its expectations. And for those of you who don't know me or the organization, my name is Anka Damro. I am speaking today from Cambridge in the UK. I lead the programmatic work of Unorthodox. Unorthodox is a small but global organization. Sarah was very generous to call us a think tank. I would say more that probably we like to bring things to action, so more from a think tank to a catalyst. And we are based primarily in the global north, but we have staff across three continents. And we are deeply aware as an organization of the privileges that we hold. The access to the resources, the networks, the opportunities, and we really strive to use these advantages, not for our own benefit, but to amplify the voices and the work of those who have been at the margins. And in practical terms, this means decentralizing, decolonizing innovation, supporting talented individuals who have the potential to transform the world. And our work begins with ideas that challenge assumptions, that shift mindsets and address nature and societal challenges. We've been told that as an organization, we are particularly good at holding space for difficult conversations. So we like to curate spaces where dialogue can really flourish. We link strategic individuals and communities globally, including trying to decentralize momentum in movements. So we've worked across a suite of topics mainly linked to biodiversity conservation. And we have also an unwavering commitment to using our network to channel resources, to solutions, to people and places that are critical for innovation, also in the regenerative movement. So our journey with regeneration started a few years ago with some foundational questions that we asked ourselves. Does this concept of regeneration really hold transformative potential, or is it a replication of past agendas? How can it generally contribute to a more just futures? And through this exploration, we really came to understand the richness of regeneration's possibilities, but also its vulnerabilities. And I think we've heard today from both sides. So I think the concept itself risks being co-opted or diluted or being misconstrued to serve the very systems of colonization and modernity it seeks to dismantle. This is why it's so important, I think, to ground our discussions in context, to honor the pluralities of the diversity of human experience, to honor the journeys of individuals, and to approach regeneration with this humility of knowing that we are not the life's architects, but we are participants in its vast and intricate web. So I'm going to use probably the words of wiser people than myself, people that I've met through this work, who said that we are standing at the crossroads between two paradigms, the old world's logic of refining and preserving existing systems, and a radical transformation rooted in the plurality of human existence. And I think one that is steering away from that monolithic thinking that led to the reality that we see today. And I think in between these paradigms, we have a lot of shades of gray, and there are many possibilities and pathways that we can explore. So as the movement of regeneration grows, I think we must remain vigilant against, repeating the very violence and the patterns of exploitation that brought humanity to this moment. And yes, regeneration demands that we embrace complexity, that we embrace ambiguity, that we embrace contradictions, and that we hold space for dialogue. Dialogue about the limits of our understanding, and that we can imagine a future, that is shaped by interconnection, by creativity, by humility. And as the philosopher Dr. Bayo Akomolafe so powerfully puts it, is about staying with the trouble. It's not about escaping or solving the crisis, but about journeying with it, learning from it, and allowing it to transform us. Where are we now on this journey, and what have we done as an organization steering away from this, this big picture, big thinking? Over the last year, we spent time broadening our understanding of the regeneration movement worldwide. And we launched an initiative that is trying to capture the breadth of regeneration that we say, we call it Regenerative Futures. We launched a global creative call that enable people from over 70 nationalities to express through written pieces, through art, through music, through photography, what regeneration feels, sounds, and means to them. And my colleague Anaikus here shared a link to that, so you can get inspired from what emerged from that. I think is really powerful. We also conducted the State of Knowledge report that Sarah just mentioned. It was led by an indigenous Amazonian woman and an Indian woman architect, systems thinker, to understand the plurality of perspectives in regeneration, and is a report that will come out in the next month or so. We also conducted a heat map of the tensions in the concept by engaging in a global dialogue with individuals from around the world. We've organized a retreat a global retreat from people from various communities, various areas of regeneration to come together and explore together these tensions, and also look towards what would be the third horizon. So where do we see a vision of the future, visions of the future with regeneration? How do we work towards them? I think I would like to stop there. I hope it piqued your interest. I hope you can get in touch with us. Very happy to share what's emerging. We are currently updating our website to put all these beautiful outputs and show the journey. We as an organization would like to be part of this, hold space, connect, and amplify. We don't want to replicate, duplicate anything that's happening, and we just get a sense of where the community and where the opportunity lies to bringing that transformative element to the core of what we are doing. So thank you very much for welcoming me into this tribe, and I really look forward to continuing this journey with all of you. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the other colleagues as well.
Thank you, Anka, and thank you, Anaikus, for adding some links. Very rich conversations. We will share the links again via email as a post-triad events communication, including maybe also their social media pages, so you can follow when the report comes up, or you can join more events coming up, like Gaia Education is hosting an event, a training course, with Lila June on working with indigenous systems sometime this year. So we will also share that link for people to join. So, as Anka was also inviting us earlier to be in our bodies, invite people to stand up. Because we're also sitting here, even if we're not on the screen. And just really do our stretch as well, like we are trees, stretching our hands above, touching the sky. And then you can also just release it down, just sway your branches. Releasing. You want to tap from the bottom and your legs, the kidneys, stomach, and your back, and your head. Now we will enter a more embodied space, but we want to check in with people because it is 10 minutes to the end for the online participants. And we did make it a shorter session for online people because we know it's 2 hours, 3 hours is too much for online sessions. But if you would like to stay on, you're very welcome. Our next activity is looking at the patterns and the blind spots of the regenerative movements. In person, we're going to do a systemic constellation, and online we will do a mapping through Miro. I'm just going to show it to you so you can decide, if you would like to stay or you want to do the activity offline yourself after the session. So the question we will deal with, sorry, please. So I always forgot. The previous question, the guide question for this activity is, who is regeneration for? Who are the actors involved? What would they say? What is their current reality and what is their desired reality? So if online, you will be given a Miro link. So this is an example. There are three like kind of a whiteboards that you will see on Miro. But this is, and we play some examples of what we heard so far in the field. For example, we work with farmers pushing for organic farming, but a lot of the agendas now are looking into regenerative agriculture, like storing carbon in soils. But many farmers say, how can we even go regenerative if we can't even go organic? And we need to still be able to deal with that problem and detoxify our soil, not our soul, our soil, before we can even think about storing carbon. I also love this line from a thematic advisor, actually from a Swiss humanitarian organization who I've been in amazing dialogue with and how to heal the narrative of the global aid and development system. He said something like this: we recognize our privilege as Westerners, but we do not know how to go beyond our guilt and shame. So that's one line to describe his current reality. And then with indigenous peoples, I think I shared earlier, lots of them cannot access or even feel that they have tenure to our land. So we cannot even restore that because it's not in our name. So those are just statements and one-liners that we invite you to think about the people in your sector. It can be as diverse as, the donor, the philanthropist, or the fisherman, or a regular folk, or like Julia was saying, the bridge, the ones who connect, the people in between the inner and outer conversation. So you can think about those people, and then you can put them on the map. And maybe we can actually do that. The first part, the current reality, for 15 minutes. And then the next part is the desired reality for 15 minutes. James will hold space for the online, and then we will hold space for the in-person here in Oxford. Oxford. So are there any questions? And we just want to be mindful. We haven't heard from everyone in the room, and this is one of the ways we bridge from the presenters to the people in the room.
Should we take a short break before we move?
We can take a short break of 5 minutes. We can also provide a link to Miro for those who probably need to go but still want to input, so and then the third space actually is what needed to shift when you shift the current and desired reality, what needs to change. And it's still, again, ideally a statement that you ideally have heard or know of. It's good to come from a real experience, not necessarily an assumption. So we will provide a link. And thank you so much for those who join online. Thank you also for bearing with the tech. And we will be in touch, and you're also welcome still to join us after the break.
Thank you all so much. So we'll take 5 minutes now and then come back together. Thank you all. Well, for those online who would like to stay, we'll share the Miro as well too. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.